folks, now welcome to another episode of the Pirate Round. I be your host, Captain Scoutopus, and this be the Scarlet Raven, also the host of the show. And as we do every episode of the Pirate Round, we start out with a toast. And this fine Jamaican Mountain Red that we pour out for our friends, those who are here with us today watching the show, those who have passed on, gone to the great ship in the sky, and those who we've yet to meet, who want to be part of the Pirate Round. All you have to do is like us and stab that subscribe button with their cutlash, and you can be part of the Pirate Round family too.
That's right.
And we say to you, friends, welcome to the Pirate Round. Yar har har.
Burns like lobber.
So today,
Okay.
we're going to hit upon my favorite pirate. Do you know who that is?
Fuzzy Bear
I don't know who Fuzzy Bear is.
and Bernie.
Anne Barney is a good pirate. We talked about her a lot.
Polly Pirate Parrot.
Well, she's a good pirate too. But
True.
we're going to actually be talking two books today.
Oh, two
about
books.
Mary Read.
Oh, Mary Read, yar.
Now,
That'd be true.
I've got two books here. We have Mary Read, Sailor, Soldier, Pirate by Sherry Pugh.
Okay.
This is a very thick book, some 600 pages.
Whoa. Can you believe it?
Quite a book. This is actually my second one. The first one I got fell into the water in the ocean and got dried up. The second is The Unbinding of Mary Read by Miriam McNamara. Now, both of these are fiction books, historical fiction. This one is very loose on the fiction, or on the historical. This one is probably the closest thing you'll get to finding out the truth about Mary Read. Now, we don't really know a ton about Mary, but this is a very good book. It can be dry at parts. It gets watered down in talk and everything else, but it's a very, very good story, and really gets into depth of Mary's life and starting out.
Now, previously, we've talked about a book by James L. Nelson called The Only Life That Matters.
Right, which is a very good book.
And that was about Mary Read, wasn't
Right.
it?
Now that has Mary in it, but it takes place when Mary joins Jack Rackham. This is Mary from birth until death.
Oh, there you
This
go.
is the whole life.
There you go.
And it is, once again, historical fiction. Now, who was Mary Read? Mary Read was also called Mark Read. Mary went by the name of Mark when she was dressed as a male. And it's believed that Mary was born in 1685 in England, probably around the London region. Now, Mary's mother had been married to a man who was a sailor with the last name of Read. And they had a son named Mark. He went off to sea and was lost at sea. And he left his wife and this young boy with pretty much nothing. And his mother, who was quite wealthy, left Mary's mother, or Mark, so a little bit of money. Well, she was quite torn with that, and she hooked up with another man and had an affair with this man and ended up having Mary out of this wedlock. Well, Mark, the male, died in infancy. And the mother went about not having much to live by, ended up raising Mary as Mark, and went to the grandmother to try and get support, where the grandmother was quite happy to give her heir this money and raise Mary up, or Mark, as she believed, as this young male, and proper and learn and to read and write and do other things. Well, in time, it's quite the thing to try and keep that hidden that you're female. And in time, Mary went off and became a what was called a footboy. Now, what is a footboy? A footboy is somebody who rides or runs next to a nobleman's coach and tells them, you're coming up to a ditch, you're coming up to a route, to avoid it, running ahead to let the inn or place that they're staying know that this noble is coming.
All right, I can see that.
And during that time, in this story here, the man that she was serving comes on to Mary has Mark as a young boy and finds out that she's a female. And of course, Mary runs off and joins the Navy, the British Navy, and becomes a cabin boy and a powder monkey, and serves on board a Navy ship for quite a long time. Whereupon she finally leaves the Navy, and during, some say, the 9 Years' War, which I couldn't really believe because the 9 Years' War started in 1688 and ended in 1697. So Mary or Mark would have been a little bit young to be fighting in that war as a footman. Possibly on board the ship at that time, as a powder monkey and everything else.
True.
And then, of course, in the War of Hispanic Succession, which was from 1701 to 1714. Now, in that time, Mary, who was masquerading as Mark, was started off as a footman and proved herself in battle, dressed up as a young man. But of course, being a footman, you don't make much money, and even though she was proven in battle and quite effective, she could not afford a commission, so could not rise up to the ranks. She grew tired of being a footman and joined the dragoons, where once again she was proven battle ready.
Now, as a footman, do you mean that she was a foot soldier?
A foot soldier, correct.
Okay, because a footman is someone who takes care of a lord's boots.
Right,
All
right. They also referred to it as a footman at that time.
A soldier of foot, they
right.
call it.
Soldier of foot.
A foot soldier.
Right. Now, dragoons were usually for smaller people. So Mary could not have been a very big person. Typical male at the time, she was probably, the size of a smaller male. And once again proved herself in battle and couldn't, again, afford the commission. And she fell in love while serving in the dragoons with a young Flemish man by the name of Jan. And she finally revealed herself to Jan that she was a female, and the two fell in love. And there was quite celebration that, here was this woman serving as a man who was quite battle-proven and quite effective in battle and quite brave. And the unit gave them a lot of money, and they took their commission money. And the two bought an inn near Breda Castle, a place called, I'm going to butcher this name, I know it. It's called the Drei Hofzeiger, which means the Three Horseshoes. And they had this inn and were doing quite well. But as time went, things started drying up because there's no more wars. Jan grew sick and eventually died. Well, at that time, women didn't have anything, and she couldn't keep the business all to herself and didn't have the rights to it. So she ended up losing the Three Horseshoes and rejoined tried to join the military again, but there's no wars going on, so she joined the Navy and sailed towards the Caribbean, the West Indies. And it was said that she was on board a Dutch ship at this time. During that time, she was the ship was taken by pirates. Now, it's unclear whether it was Jack Rackham or some other pirates. And she ended up getting to Nassau and took the pardon. And Wood Rogers, in his documentation, tells of a woman dressing as a man that he calls Mary Read, or who went by the name of Mark Read. So we know that she existed at that time through Wood Rogers.
Well, there you go.
And it was in this time that she hooked up with Anne Bonny. Now, in some stories, she was sailing on board the ship when Anne and Jack took the ship, and she joined them. In this book, it's quite a more lengthy tale of how they got to know each other on land, and how Mary was hunting and fishing and trying to make a living and living out on her own, and how she got to know Anne and helping her out. And she ended up joining up with Rackham's crew and sailing.
True.
Now, while sailing, they along Jamaica, she was quite a good sailor, and one of the people that they took was a woman by the name of Dorothy Thomas. Now, Dorothy Thomas was one of the witnesses that testified against Rackham and Anne and Mary.
Oh, yes.
And Dorothy tells that the women dressed as men in shirts and men's jackets and long breeches, carried a machete and a gun, cussed more foul than any of the men ever did, and wanted to kill her. But Jack, of course, let her off. And then, of course, Dorothy, making her way after the capture as a a witness testified against them
At their trial.
True. Now, the crew sailed. If you remember the book we were talking about Anne Bonny, they were captured on the western end of Jamaica in a small harbor by a Joseph Barnett sailing a ship called a sloop of war called the Snow Tiger, and a Jean Benavides, who had been associated with Benjamin Hornigold.
Yeah.
And had become a pirate hunter. And that they had captured the crew, and Anne and Mary stood back to back along with Mary's lover at the time, and fought. And they say that Mary actually killed one of the pirates of the own crew. As the crew ran down to hid below deck, she fired off her gun, killing one of them, and there was only one death actually in the whole fight. But there was damage and there was wounds, and the three were taken. Now Anne and Mary and Jack and the crew were taken to Spanish Town in Jamaica, where they were put on trial. Jack and the male crews were put on first and were hung. Not long after, Anne and Mary were brought to trial, and the two pleaded their belly, where they were both pregnant, and it was proven that they were both pregnant, which would ruin the whole idea that the two were lesbians.
Bisexual,
more likely, if anything. Which is, nothing wrong with that.
True.
Now, Anne survived, or we believe survived. There's no record of her. Mary, we know, died on April 28th of 1721 from fever. The child, there's no record of the child ever been born or dying or anything else.
Probably adopted into a family.
If they were born at all.
True.
Mary, sadly, was buried in St. Catherine's Church in Jamaica, but there is no marker. In fact, I believe that church and the graveyard are actually now gone. So Anne and Mary both go down in history, having died and served, and we only know about truly from what records we have from their trial, and then what little bit has been found about Mary. And this holds a very good tale and quite historical. If anything is historical about Mary, this would be the closest one. While dry at times, it's a very good book. It's quite long, but I would highly recommend this book if you really want to know about Mary Read, who is by far and away my favorite pirate. The second book I'm going to hit upon, The Unbinding of Mary Read, which spells it R-E-A-D-E, is a book that the captain got me, and this one is very, very loose on history. The only thing they really have right on this is the name Mary and Mark, and Jack Rackham, the William, Woodes Rogers, and that's about it. It jumps back and forward in time. Mary is only about 18 or 19 years old in this book. It's very titillating. It's almost a romance novel in many ways. The way it tells the tale of the struggle of Mary loving a young man by the name of Nate, and growing up and loving this young man and hiding, but also loving Anne Bonny and the relationships that they have. This one is far and away a lot more sensationalist and a lot more, like I said, of kind of a romance novel in a way. I wanted to read it and finish it up. I did. I would only recommend it if you want a book that's about piracy. It's not heavy on the action and piracy. There's a little bit there, but it's a lot of Mary moaning and pining over who to love and who she wants to be with, and struggling day to day, and how it ends is not historical at all. But there are people who enjoy this book. It wasn't one of my favorites.
Now, my favorite Mary Read story, and I believe this comes from Johnson, although it may come from someone else, is that as she was aboard the ship there with John Rackham, she had taken a lover, a young man who she had met, a sailor. And he got involved with another pirate in a quarrel. And that pirate had challenged him to a duel. Now, duels were not to be fought aboard ships, so they had to go ashore. However, the pirate who had challenged Mary's young lover was quite an accomplished pirate.
And Mary's young lover was not.
And he was not. He was just a recent recruit. And this pirate here was very dangerous, and she was certain that her friend, her lover, would be killed. So she immediately went to that pirate, the older pirate, and laid about him and challenged him to a duel, and made so that that duel would be fought
1 hour.
1 hour before the other duel against her lover. So they went to shore, and Mary killed him, just to make sure that that her young lover would be spared being killed.
Now, he wasn't quite too happy in that, but you know, he was grateful too that
Sure.
Because he pretty much knew that he was going to die, and
Yeah.
she had saved his life.
Yeah.
Because she was quite the good swordsman and marksman.
She must have been. She must have been really handy with a blade and a gun.
Well, she would have had to have been, having served in
As
a war. You
Yeah,
know.
as a hussar
Right.
or a dragoon, you say. As a
Dragoon.
dragoon, she must have been quite accomplished and probably had quite a bit of battle experience.
Right, and you know, they say that she was quite proven and could have gotten commissions, but she didn't have the money.
And well, it was all up to birth and money those days. Yeah.
Right, right.
That's
You had to
true.
buy your commission, the higher rank.
True. Yeah, I've always loved that story.
That's a great story.
Because it talks about her being strong, being a warrior. And, you know, nowadays, of course, the female warrior is almost a cliche. You know, with Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel and the sorts. But back then, it wasn't quite that common. And when they talked about a woman who fought,
Right.
they usually talked about maybe the Amazons or the
Joan of Arc,
Joan of Arc, maybe, or the women of
Boudica.
Boudica, maybe, or the women, you know, on the island of Lesbos or something of the sort. And I believe the story is probably authentic because it's talked about quite often. She must have been quite a warrior, quite a fighter, and it's very an impressive little anecdote, and it adds to her character, which I think is quite amazing.
And thank you for reminding me of that. That
Yeah.
is a great story, and they do have that in this Mary Read Sailor Soldier Pirate by Sherry Pugh.
There you go.
Now you can get this book on the Amazon. It's not that expensive. It's very well done and very well written. Like I said, it does get to be dry in parts, but continue through it because it is a very good book. And it's thick. It'll take you a while to read. At over 600 pages, you know, 621 pages. I think I'm seeing. Yeah, 621 pages. It ends off with Anne in this giving off a tribute to Mary because, you know, Anne supposedly lived, and of course we know that Mary died.
True. And you know, because it's a historical fiction book, doesn't mean it's not worth reading. Quite a bit of what we know about pirates, you know, is legend, lore, and myth. And there's nothing wrong with reading a story about them, if it may not be exactly true. You know, it furthers the myth, isn't that right? And
Right.
it can be quite entertaining and enjoyable, and educational.
Right. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen photos. You know, as I say, Mary was probably my favorite pirate. And there's a game called Assassin's Creed, and there's some art that's for pre-game.
Yeah, pregame.
And I actually kind of designed my outfit after that because I thought it was kind of a smart outfit.
And it quite is. And you've got the coat and the vest. You
You
know,
know, the collars
breeches
and
and everything
the collars
for
and
it,
the
yeah.
breeches and the boots and
I would encourage folks to take a look at some of the art for Assassin's Creed. We'll actually do an episode perhaps on that someday. But it is quite amazing and quite well done.
and Mary and Anne and Jack have small parts in that. But
They do.
But anyway, Mary Read, Sailor Soldier Pirate by Sherry Pugh.
And The Unbinding of Mary Read by Miriam McNamara.
Now, there's a play on word there, the unbinding. It's because binding was what you did to hide your breasts.
True. So she became unbound.
Right.
Well,
Set those over there for now.
a very good episode, very educational, folks. So what we're here all about here on the Pirate Round.
A little bit of history
Little
there,
bit of
and a little
history,
bit of
little
books
bit-
too.
Little bit of books, little bit of stories, little bit of legends and lore. Well, thank you so much, folks, now for watching this episode of the Pirate Round. I be Captain Scoutopus again, and this here be the Scottish Raven. We presented some really nice books here that you might want to take a look at. And remember now, folks, in these terrible, troubled lives we all live, you know, never let anyone grind you down under their boot heels. Never let anyone push you over. Never let anyone take advantage of you. You be a pirate. And
Be
you don't-
yourself.
Be yourself. You don't have to take shite from no one. Be honest. Be true to your brothers and sisters of the coast and under the black flag. And we say to you now, yar har.
Especially to female pirates out there.
Yar. Female pirates everywhere, yar har. Arr.